Let's move on to the Cleveland Browns, last team in the AFC North here. They finished the season 7-10. Obviously, they started off weak at the quarterback position. They knew that Deshaun Watson was coming in at the end of the season at some point, and they had to see what they got, and it was a lot of rust involved in that. You could hear it through the TV, but they have a 9.5 Vegas odd, which is pretty high, which tells you that we're high in the Browns offense, and so is Vegas. So they were 6th in rushing yards last year behind Nick Chubb, obviously, but they were 23rd in passing. I think they'll still be top 10 in rushing, and I think they'll move themselves up into the top 15 in passing because Deshaun Watson's just a talented quarterback. I'm not saying he's going to be a top 5 guy, but he's been there before multiple times every year of his career pretty much. There's a chance he does it again. So he's ADP 79 overall, QB 9, so people like him as a top 10. Here's my thing with him. In 6 games, he did have 7 touchdowns, 5 picks. He did have 36 rushes for 175 and a touchdown. That was always been a good part of his game. He's not rushing like Jalen Hurts is or Josh Allen, but he still has a good piece of his game in the running game, especially in the red zone, finding his way in the end zone. I'm taking a chance on him here. If you miss any of the top guys, you've got him, you've got Tua in that range that I'm willing to take a chance on one of those 2 guys because their ceilings and potential and the offenses they're on, they're going to have a big play on there. I mean, you even said it to me prior to that you're going to be keeping Watson, as a keeper in our league. And I think that's a great opportunity, especially where you have him so late because you took a chance on him last year. So
what's under my robe?
Yeah. To me, I like him, but this offense obviously has always run through Nick Chubb. ADP 14 overall, running back 6. We have him in our top 5 because the guy has gotten better year after year after year. He was running back 5 last year, 6 in PPR. He had over 300 rushing attempts last year for 1,500 yards. He has never finished a season below 5 yards per carry. That's why we love this guy. Nobody else can say that. He had 12 touchdowns. I expect that to be the same. He had 1 through the air. I believe he's going to do a little bit more than 27 receptions. I expect him to be closer towards 40, add to about 10 more receptions to his game this season. Should increase his numbers even more, which is why I could see him finishing top 3, top 4. Anything besides those 2 guys, I think the writing's on the walls for them. There's not much to really dive into besides the fact that we do like both these guys and we would draft them in our drafts.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is the argument that we made about Chubb the entire time is this is the best offense he's been on in terms of talent. And this the best offense that he's had in terms of a passing game. And so I think that only helps him. And people want to say, oh, he's older. All right. But there's no Kareem Hunt there. And they're like, oh, well, Jerome Ford is there. Well, what do you think Jerome Ford is going to do? Cut into Nick Chubb's? Nick Chubb is the best pure running back in football. He's not going to cut into, even if he gets 20% of the touches, fine. Nick Chubb is efficient as hell with the ball. And again, he's not facing 8-man boxes anymore. You can't. No. You have to respect Deshaun Watson. You have to respect the receivers on the outside here. And there's no slouches. This is a really good, we've talked about this before. This is a really good receiving room. Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Cedric Tillman. You have 4 legitimate options at receiver. All right. So, and Deshaun Watson can chuck the ball.
Well, look at Deshaun Watson at the end of the season.
I was just going to say that.
QB finishes. Yeah. And I just want to bring up.
When he started to figure it out and the rust came off, we saw the Deshaun Watson of old. And this is what we've been saying all offseason is he doesn't need to be the Deshaun Watson from 3 years ago. He just needs to be 80% of that. And this offense is going to be really, really good.
Yeah. And we're talking about weeks 17 and 18 last year. He finished off as QB 8, QB 6. At that point, Nick Chubb had a 100-yard game, 14 carries for 100 yards, and he had 12 carries for 77 in the final game of the season, the loss to Pittsburgh, both of which he had respectively a 7.4 yards per attempt and a 6.4 yards per attempt. So Chubb, even with Watson, is going to be even more successful, like you just said. Just look at those rushing numbers there when Watson is being successful. I mean, Chubb only finished RB14 in that Week 17 game where he had the 100 yards, but he finished RB2 in Week 18 with the 77 and what he did on 12 carries because he also had 5 catches for 45 and a touchdown. So to me, that's where I see the value of those 2 guys. Let's move on to the receiving core. Amari Cooper, ADP 40 overall, wide receiver 17. He finished wide receiver 8. Just the news today. I know he's dealing with a little bit of an injury. He's back to individual drills as of yesterday, which is good. Keep an eye on his health there. But he was wide receiver 8 standard, 10 PPR. He had 1,160 yards, a 14-point yards per reception, and 9 touchdowns. Those wide receiver 1 numbers, obviously finishing the top 10. But then you've got Elijah Moore, Cedric Tillman, new additions, and then Donovan Peoples-Jones, Mr. Tried and True and reliable. So Elijah Moore is what they're coining in camp right now, a versatile weapon. They said that you could see him lining up in the backfield this season a little bit too as well, especially with no Kareem Hunt back there. Maybe some trickery, who knows? But he finished last year with 12 yards per catch, 1 touchdown, and only 37 receptions.
Don't look at the Jets numbers.
I was going to say, don't look at the numbers while he was with the Jets last year. Just look at the potential and where the Jets took him and what they know. And I think that's what you got to get. I think he's going to be an awesome wide receiver too for this team. And then you got Cedric Tillman coming in, who the year before last, before he had his injury and in Tennessee, he was
the best wide receiver in college football.
Exactly. And so Jalen Hyatt was that the following year for Tennessee. So when Tillman was hurt, I like Tillman here. I think he's a sneaky pick. It's a great dynasty pick, a great rookie draft pick, and it's a great late round pick because he could emerge as somebody that could start eating into on these 3 wide receiver sets outside of Donovan Peoples-Jones. And if he truly is what they tout him to be, he could give Moore a run for his money. But people love Elijah Moore. Even his was it Newsome, their D-back, was talking about how he is something special, that he's had difficulty in camp covering him because he's sees a lot out of him that you don't see from other wide receivers. So I want to piece this offense.
Elijah Moore is extremely talented. And I just said the same thing about Denzel Mims, and he just got traded. And I know it doesn't look like anything on the surface because it's like, oh, well, what has he done his entire career? And what has Elijah Moore done his entire career? You have to consider that the Jets' passing offense has been absolutely awful. So you could have had Justin Jefferson there, and he would have had crap numbers. So because the quarterback play was terrible. And that's why I'm so excited about Garrett Wilson. We'll talk about him when we do the Jets, is because you look at the numbers that he actually put up in a terrible passing offense, and you have some confidence that when you have a legit thrower with the football with Aaron Rodgers, that he can actually perform. Going back to Elijah Moore, and you watch his game tape, and he's so talented. He gets open all the time, and he catches the ball very well, and he can do things after the catch. But they just couldn't get him the ball. I mean, what was he getting? He's like zero targets. He's out there for 86% of the snaps and getting 0 targets from Zach Wilson.
Yeah, it was a quarterback problem, not an Elijah Moore problem last year.
Right. And I'll say this about Cedric Tillman too, is I think he's going to get a lot more playing time, and I think he can overtake Donovan Peoples-Jones as a number 3 there. And I've said this about Elijah Moore, is they can move him around the entire offense. I've been saying this since he went to the Browns, is he can play every position. And so if you have Donovan Peoples-Jones on the outside, he can be in 2 wide receiver sets on the outside. He could be in 3 wide receiver sets in the slot. So Peoples-Jones comes in on the outside with Amari Cooper. And Amari Cooper's had some dings on, nothing serious in the last couple of years, but he's had some minor injuries. He's dealing with a tweaked injury right now. And so Tillman could step up into that number 3 role very easily, especially if there's an injury of any sort. Cedric Tillman is a guy in the dynasty league that you should absolutely draft. He's a fantastic receiver. I want to, and even with like David Njoku, we'll get into the tight ends here. Insert clip here on my tight end on that argument. But I'll ask you this: is what wide receiver do you like the best at their value here? Because it's really hard for me, because I like Amari Cooper at his value a lot. I like Elijah Moore at his value a lot.
Yeah,
Donovan Peoples-Jones is essentially going to be free. Tillman's going to be free. Like,
I like Amari Cooper, and this is the only reason why. Because when you look at the running backs around Amari Cooper, you're getting a running back 2 at that spot at 40th overall. But you have a chance to draft a wide receiver 1 in terms of finish. I mean, he finished wide receiver 8 and he's done it before in his career too. I like that with the quarterback upgrade because he did wide receiver 8 last year without a full season with Deshaun Watson. So that just says what type of receiver Cooper is, and I want to grab him because he's lower on the board than I think he should be. For a team, for the Vegas putting a 9.5 odds on the Browns for wins, but having everybody's drafting Cooper as wide receiver 17. To me, that's where I'm going to get the value because you look at the people that are going ahead of him. You've got Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, Chris Olave, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins. So T. Higgins and Devonta Smith are pretty much 1Bs to their team. Well, Amari Cooper's the 1A. Amari Cooper's going to outdo Deebo Samuel. He'll be on par with DK Metcalf, maybe a little bit better. I'm just saying the chance for him to finish in the top 10 again is high. And if you can do that and you're getting him in the 4th round, that's probably the best value you could find there because he's going to finish with 2nd round numbers and you don't have to pay for 2nd round wide receiver. So, but I do like Elijah Moore. I think, 47 overall and who's around him, I think you've got a lot of opportunities. 47 wide receivers, 114 overall.
Yeah.
And you're looking at Beckham and Juju Smith-Schuster, Quentin Johnston. I think people are sleeping on him there. You've got wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s around him that are not proven. And you've got Elijah Moore, who has an opportunity to be a solid wide receiver 2 in this offense. I just think Cooper's the best value, period. But I do love Tillman. I would like to take a chance on him. And then David Njoku, let's finish up this whole Browns chat. And the fact is, Njoku finished last year as tight end 13. He's 97th overall. It's tight end 10, so he's a top 10 tight end. I've got him in my top 10 tight ends as well because I think he's still a freak athlete. They drafted him for that reason. I think if you look at the history of Deshaun Watson, he loves his tight ends. He loved them in Houston. He used Njoku here last year. And Njoku became kind of the shining star outside of Amari Cooper last year. He had 58 catches for 628 and 4 touchdowns with a 10.8 yards per reception. The stat that really, really excites me about Njoku is he was the number 2 tight end in terms of red zone targets last year. And I could see that happening again this year because he's just a freak big body athlete. And he's the one guy that's going to be on this Browns offense that's going to be able to go down for contested catches, corner fades, and quick pop passes over the middle against those guys. He's a beast.
I agree. I think that he is a great red zone target. The issue with Njoku, and this is again any tight end outside the top 4, is volume. And with the pass catchers that are on this team, I just don't trust the volume there. He's a guy that if I fade tight end and I don't get one of those top guys, I absolutely want Njoku, but I can, again, make the same argument about any of those guys there. The Hunter Henry.
Yeah, Freiermuth is right with him and everything. Again, I'm not saying it. I just like the threat he is in the red zone for touchdown potential. That being said, he's never had over 4 in his career, but I like the threat there. He had 80 targets last year. It was reminiscent of his 2018, his sophomore season, where he had 88 targets, pretty much finished the same amount of yardage. Everything was pretty much the same across the board. So the biggest difference between him and a lot of other tight ends that you're drafting around him is his home run ability. His athleticism and his speed gives him a chance to have these 70-yard touchdowns, these 60, and 40-yard touchdown plays, whereas some of the other guys aren't going to have the yards after catch that he has and the broken tackles that he's going to get. But you're right. Volume is